to another video where we try to discuss U.S. immigration law in a way that's easy for you to understand. And today we are discussing a common question that we run into when dealing with our Canadian clients. And Canadians often wonder if, because they're closer to the United States and because Canada and the U.S. are so similar, whether or not it makes the immigration process easier for them to the United States. Now, there are some advantages that Canadians do have due to the proximity to the United States, due to agreements such as the USMCA and other treaties between the United States and Canada, such as visa-exempt travel to the United States. Canadians don't need a B1, B2 visa in their passport. They can simply show up with a valid passport at a port of entry and seek entry as a visitor. Also, Canadians have access to the TN visa, which is only available to Canadians and Mexicans. They also can take advantage of the E1 visa as a treaty trader or E2 visas for investors. But the path to permanent residency and the path to U.S. citizenship for Canadians is the same as it is for other nationalities throughout the world. There are no significant advantages when it comes to a path to permanent residency or U.S. citizenship. So if you're Canadian and you're thinking about moving to the United States, you wonder, what is your path to U.S. immigration? What is your path to U.S. citizenship? So we're going to break down what your options are and what your advantages are being a Canadian and how you can take advantage of that. So the number one thing is Canadians are visa exempt. So visa exempt status is a very big deal for individuals traveling to the United States. Canadians can stay up to 6 months for tourism or business without the need of going to a consulate to get a visa, while other nationalities throughout the world have to actually go visit a consulate and get a B1, B2 visa in their passport and be approved for simple travel to the United States, even just for tourism. And for work visas, Canadians can go directly to a TN visa at a port of entry. Even if you have an H-1B visa or an L-1 visa, you don't have to go to the U.S. consulate and get a stamp in your passport because you're visa exempt. You can immediately go to a port of entry and seek entry to the United States. Now, it doesn't guarantee automatic entry. CBP still has the authority to grant your entry to the United States and make sure that your entry is legal and it meets all immigration rules. However, you're visa exempt, so you get to skip that consulate process that can be very cumbersome if you're trying to visit or work in the United States. And then special visa options, as I've mentioned before, for Canadians. The TN visa that's available for qualifying occupations such as engineers, accountants, lawyers, nurses, and not having to go through the H-1B visa sponsorship process and being able to apply for that TN directly out of port of entry. Also, the E1, that is for those that conduct trade with the United States, and that could be trade in goods or services as long as more than 50% of your international trade is with the United States, then you might qualify for an E1 as a treaty trader is what they call it. Or maybe you have a significant investment in the United States. You bought a business or you're investing in a new business in the United States. That might qualify you as an E2 investor to come to the United States. Also, there's an L1 visa that is available for those that are working for a company that has offices in both the United States and in Canada. And maybe you're an executive or managerial or specialized knowledge employee. You can be transferred from the Canadian office to a qualifying U.S. office. And the advantage of an L1 is if you are an executive or manager, there is a direct path to a green card that makes that process a little bit easier. Now, typically the green card options for Canadians fall under two categories, and Canadians do not get any special treatment in this regard. It's the same as the rest of the world. You could be sponsored by a qualifying family member. So U.S. citizens can sponsor you as long as it's a spouse, a child, a parent, or even a sibling. Green card holders can be sponsored by spouses and unmarried children. But the processing times are the same for everyone else. It's subject to the visa bulletin and it's subject to your country of birth. Canada falls under the all other countries category, where the wait times are less than some other countries, but you're still subject to those wait times on the visa bulletin. If you're sponsored by an employer or through employer-based green card sponsorship, it still requires a job offer, and it still requires an employer sponsorship in most cases to work in the United States through that sponsorship. And again, even though your category, because you were born in Canada, may have less of a wait time than other countries, those wait times still apply. They only issue so many immigrant visas and green cards a year to citizens of the world. And even as a Canadian, you'd be subject to those wait times according to the category under which you're being sponsored to the United States. Do Canadians get faster processing for immigration? A lot of people assume because of the proximity between US and Canada, they get faster processing, but that's not exactly true. There is no priority processing for green cards or immigrant visas because you're Canadian. Again, you're subject to country quotas and the visa category under which you're applying. Now, you can argue that you do get faster processing if you're Canadian because as a TN, you can just do it at a port of entry, or an H-1B or an L. It can just be done at a port of entry, which is an advantage. And E2 visas are processed a little bit faster, through the consulate for Canadians. However, these are all temporary options, and you would still require sponsorship for a green card just like anyone else. There is no automatic eligibility for a green card because you are a Canadian citizen. So in some ways, yes, it is easier for Canadians to come to work and to visit and live in the United States because they enjoy visa-free travel to the United States. And a lot of these visas can be applied for directly at a port of entry without the need of visiting a US consulate. However, for Canadians, there is no fast track to permanent residency, and you must apply through family or employment or investment just like anybody else. So if you're thinking of moving to the United States as a Canadian, it's important to understand what all your available options are and how long that process might take. And also understand that a Canadian is a foreign national, is not a citizen of the United States, and is still subject to US immigration law.